Good evening, happy Thursday, and welcome to 5 Up Recovery. I'm Carter Reynolds. I'll be your host this show moving forward. This is the first episode, so it's going to be a little less structured than the ones moving forward, but we'll kind of go through how all the shows will be set up. It'll be every Thursday night at 9 o'clock. It'll go live. I'll talk about myself a little bit first. I'm Carter Reynolds is my name. I'm a writer, father, husband, avid Warhammer and Dungeons & Dragons player. And I've always found that inspiration from the tabletop has worked its way into inspiration for novels and short stories. And actually, I'm a published author. I've got 2 short stories and a novel up. First of all is Mutton. It's a hard-boiled crime short story. Rough Landing is a war story, and Candlelighter is another kind of a hard-boiled noir. That's the novel. They're all set in sword and sorcery fantasy setting. They're, high magic and everything like that, but each story kind of takes a genre feel to it. I'm actually working on the second novel right now, Gred, which is a horror story set in a fantasy setting, and they're all connected. Some characters carry over and things like that. It's kind of the first 3 books are kind of setting up the world a little bit and kind of sprinkling the stories all over the place, and then once I get through those first 3 books, it's all going to kind of come together in a big sweeping epic like you guys like. That's a little bit about me. The name of the show, 5 Up Recovery, comes from it's a mixture of Warhammer speak. 5 up would be rolling a 6-sided die and trying to get a 5 or higher. People always talk about like a 3-up armor save, 5 up feel no pain. Well, this is 5 Up Recovery. I'm 571 days sober from alcohol, and I'm never going to take this like platform to get preachy, but it has helped quite a bit. The hobby, Dungeons and Dragons, and storytelling has really, really given me a place to release the energy and that was built and pent up after getting sober. So I think it's just a good, I just want to share what I'm doing. I think it's a positive side of the internet that we can bring. Almost never going to be negative, as little as possible. There's enough of that going around. I like talking about what I love, and I don't like talking about the things that I don't like. So that's what this show is going to be about. So 5 Up Recovery is going to have a little bit of a structure. The first 3 Thursdays each month are going to be Hop on the Hobby Train, which is pretty much going to be Warhammer talk. I'm going to switch the camera over and just paint and talk over it, and you can see what my hands are doing while I'm rambling on. But it's kind of, we'll always start with what's on your table, kind of get everyone, pick up your paintbrushes, pick up your glue and your clippers, or, your, whatever you might be hobbying with, arts, crafts, whatever it is, you can just listen to the sultry sounds of my voice while you work it out. So hop on the hobby train. Another thing I specifically want to do is bring more Horus Heresy content. Warhammer is becoming a juggernaut pop culture very fast. And I love Warhammer 40K. I love Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Played both those for years, and I've got fully painted armies for both of them. But the Horus Heresy is my true draw. I love the novels. 55 novel series, bananas. I'm reading the Siege of Terror right now, which is 10 books, and it's just a really interesting setting. It's like Greek myth meets Justice League meets Dune. That's how I would break down the Horus Heresy. And the tabletop game is extremely fun, and there's just not a whole lot of content about it. So we've got kind of a local community of guys playing it right now. And, I'll kind of bring in, Hop on the Hobby Train, I'll talk about, upcoming events, what I'm working on at the time, games that we did. Eventually I'm going to see if I can actually get battle reports going. That'll be, just good, fun, positive hobby content. In fact, right now, we can kind of take a look over here. I've got what I'm working on currently. The Alpha Legion, the most secretive and deceptive of the Space Marines. There's kind of some of the back stuff that's going on. So that's, that's what's on my table. That's what I'll always start with. And then the final Thursday each month, which, would be today, so this is kind of the first episode of it, is Writer's Recourse. That's where I'm going to talk about everything Cryxia. I'm a new writer. I've got a lot of lore and a lot of stuff that I'm working on, but I don't have a lot of books out yet. So Writer's Recourse is going to be kind of me blabbering on about Cryxia. And most of Cruxia's exploration, and most of the outlining I've done was through Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, which was really cool. It was almost like running a TV show where all my friends were not only actors but also writers at the writers' table. You know, a lot of these stories were, you know, I'm the one that put them down on paper, but they are multiple people, lots of people coming in the clutch to help me out writing them and whatnot. You know, better than editors. So I'll talk about, I've got a really big Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I'm about to set up, called the Edo campaign. Edo is kind of like my Japan. It's a peninsula, not an island, but it's separated off the mainland of the Western continent. You know, it's got a very specific warrior culture, the Kanto, which are very, very, you know, inspired by samurai and ninja. So it'll be fun, you know, going into that campaign, sharing, you know, the story as it unravels and whatnot. And it'll be cool because I won't be able to outline the entire story because I don't want to ruin it for my players. So, you know, you'll kind of be along with them, getting a little bit. So Writer's Recourse will be a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons recap, a little bit of prepping. In fact, the first episode I'm going to be breaking down the map and then coming up with the side characters and characters that'll be, you know, I already have kind of the main players, but, you know, whenever you do a campaign, and I've actually played this one before, but you need to get to know your players first and foremost. And, you know, you want to talk to them, you want to make the characters relate to their backstories. You want to have them bring in their own characters and then weave them into your story. You know what I mean? So that's what you know, you are the writer director, it's your story, but it's for them. You know, always, that's what you got to remember. Dungeons and Dragons is like improv theater. You know, the first rule of improv theater is don't deny. Like if someone brings something to the table, explore it. Even if it's a bad idea, you know, kind of like show, if someone brings a bad idea, like let them explore it and then show the circumstances, you know, what ends up happening because you made a bad decision. That's the best part about role playing. And also it's just good for writing stories, you know. All the characters have their own motivations. They're all trying to do their own things. D&D is nice because it's a cooperative story, so everyone's kind of working together towards a goal. And then when you write a novel, you know, you oftentimes have all your characters working against each other in ways. So that's Writer's Recourse. Will just be about talking about that kind of stuff, you know. I'll catch you up on, I'll do some readings from my books, catch you up on a little bit of what's going on with the new stories that I'm working on. I've got a short story coming out as soon as I finish it, but it's mostly done. It's like 3/4 of the way done. It's called Fame. Big David Bowie inspiration off of that name. Yeah, it's, you know, I'll talk about that probably on the next episode of Writer's Recourse. So you got something to wait for, you know, in a month's time for the next one. But yeah, that's, you know, that's the opening spiel. Outline both the shows. Yeah, I guess actually, you know, we will just go through, let's do a little bit of lore breakdown. I'll finish up with a reading out of my novel Candlelighter, just to see, you know, see if you have no idea who I am or what any of this is, then, you know, maybe you can see what I'm about, get a little hook out of that chapter, or you can be like, no, this is not my jam, and move on. That's cool too. Copies are available through Amazon.com, of course, and you can get signed copies by directly messaging me, which I'll leave the contact info up at the end and everything like that. So I guess let's break this down into a two-part show. We'll do Hop on the Hobby Train first, and then we'll move into Writer's Recourse. I think that'll be a cool little way to go about it. You know, and I'll keep it short and sweet. I want to do this episode. It's not going to really run more than 20, 25 minutes. I think I'm going to stick to a half an hour time for the show. Because I got to get used to just going on, talking, and, you know, keeping up with it. So Hop on the Hobby Train, the Horus Heresy. What is the Horus Heresy? Well, Horus Heresy is a galaxy-spanning civil war that is the breadcrumbs that lead to Warhammer 40,000, which is the, you know, big, vast, dystopian future setting. You know, you probably have a little idea of what Warhammer 40K is if you're tuning into this show. That's what most of my little YouTube shorts are about and things like that. But the Horus Heresy is similar, but it takes place 10,000 years beforehand. It's kind of hard to describe the difference between the two. Horus Heresy is a lot more Baroque. It's kind of like Warhammer 40,000 is where the dream collapsed. The Horus Heresy is when it's the collapse of the dream. It's when, you know, they still have this grand view for what the future will be, but then it all comes crashing down, grand tragedy. It's excellent stuff. I highly recommend the novels. Maybe not all of them, but definitely the first trilogy is good. Horde is just an intro to everything. And then it's cool because, there's 18 legions, 18 different Space Marine chapters, or Space Marine legions in the Horus Heresy. And they each have their own distinct character. And that's kind of the whole vibe, you know what I mean? It's like you really get into the character of them. And you kind of, make up your own, your own dudes as kind of the, your own guys. Your little special twist on your army and how it fits into the overall, like, legion and their character. And the Horus Heresy is about the 18 legions, 9 versus 9. I have 3 armies for the Horus Heresy. I play the Death Guard, which I just recently finished. I have the Salamanders from 2nd edition. And then I'm working right now on, kind of on the hobby train. It's mostly going to be about Alpha Legion, because that's what I'm working on right now. 3 very distinct, very different companies. Death Guard and Salamanders are a little similar just on how they wage war, but they couldn't be more different at the core of their being. I guess, this is, we'll hop on the hobby train. We'll keep this short, but we'll do a little lore on each of them. The Salamanders are the, only good guys in Warhammer 40,000. Not completely true, but, they, instead of protecting the Imperium or imposing the Imperium's ideals on people, they are there to protect humanity and to save as many people. They're like Superman, Superman's not just there to take out the bad guy, he is also there to save everyone. He's a fireman. He goes to put out the fires and save people. That's what the Salamanders do. Although, ironically, they are really heavily using fire. They're known for Flame and Melta, onto the anvils of battle, lots of flames, lots of fire. So, kind of the opposite of a firefighter, but same idea as Superman. Just they want to save humanity. They want to save people. They have really striking green armor. They're bedecked in dragon livery. They hunt dragons. They're called drakes on their home planet, which is like a giant volcano world. It's really, as with everything, it's just really cool. Everything in Warhammer is very cool. When you start to kind of focus on the details a little bit and be like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, don't worry about it, man. There's a chainsaw sword and it's all good. It's a lot of fun. So that's the Salamanders. They are a loyalist legion. There was, it's a civil war. 9 joined with Horus, the War Master, and went against the Emperor of Mankind. So 9 legions are loyalist and 9 are traitor. My other 2 are both traitor legions. The Death Guard are just the most resolute, the toughest guys out there. They're known for being, attritional warfare, grinding things down, sieges. They are, they also are the most resistant to disease and radiation, and so they kind of go, they're the toughest nuts to crack. They go into the worst landscapes, the worst environments rather, and they withstand these environments and they continue waging war. Warhammer's all about war. That's all there is, so that you can fuel a tabletop game where you play against your buddy and roll dice. It's fun how it feeds into each other. But, I'm very into the lore side of things, the narrative. I'm not the best player at all. I kind of have too many armies to master any of them. I just have fun getting into the hobby side of things more, and I do have fun playing them. I love playing the game and everything like that. But I'm much more focused on, this is going to be much more of a lore channel and hobby channel than it is going to be competitive play and stuff like that. There's a lot of those out there, and man, my buddies are great at that kind of stuff. More power to you if you want to play Warhammer that style. But this will be more storytelling time for Warhammer. So that the Death Guard also famously during the Horus Heresy sell their souls to the chaos god Nurgle, who's this big bloated god of disease, and he's a big inspiration for Quechlane, who's the god of decay and disease in my world. Very big, huge influence. And that's all of this is any writings that you take every inspiration you've ever seen and you mold it into your own thing. You know what I mean? That's how it's always been. So Nurgle and the Death Guard have always been a personal favorite. And then finally the Alpha Legion, or the new one that I'm working on. See, I got a little captain right there. Bam. Not the greatest light. Really cool aquamarine armor in silver. Really fun to paint. And I'm using a new style of paint technique that I've never done before, which we'll get into on a Hop on the Hobby train. I'm also not a master hobbyist, you know what I mean? But I figured I'll share what I do. I do it a lot. Why not? So yeah, the Alpha Legion are the most secretive, the most espionage, subterfuge, stealth of the traitors, I'd say. Raven Guard on the loyalist side are like also, you know, kind of the stealth guys, but the Alpha Legion are known for infiltration. Like, it's not so much that they go to warfare and hit you from, they're also known as the Hydra Dominatus. So their warfare is attacking from every side, you know, like just a complete threat saturation of the enemy, coming outflanking and deep striking in, and, you know, coming from the left flank and the right flank, and then having already infiltrated your troops. And, you know, they use a lot of human, menials and whatnot. You know, Space Marines are technically superhumans. They're like 8 feet tall. They have 2 hearts. They're genetically modified with like techno sorcery and all sorts of stuff. So they're kind of like, you know, they're not really human anymore. But the Alpha Legion uses a lot of human, like spies and intermediaries. And, you know, it's like when they go to war with you, like I said, they've already, you know, your ground crew is actually their guys. They've been doing it the whole time. And before you know it, you're getting hit from behind as well. They're really fun. Their rules are really cool. It's a very different army than I normally play, so it's kind of put me out of my comfort zone. And yeah, it should be pretty fun. So that is that's what's on my table. That's, you know, a little bit of lore drop. Hop on the Hobby train. I think each episode I'll take we'll have an actual like theme, and I'll just kind of break down, you know, that lore bit that I'm talking about. Mostly it'll be Warhammer lore and things like that, but I might also do, you know, some days just talk about D&D, some days just talk about my novel and stuff like that, because there's going to be a lot more Hop on the Hobby train with 3 episodes a month. But yeah, that concludes today's miniature episode of Hop on the Hobby train. So I'll move into Writer's Recourse. Boom, yeah. I think I'll finish with a reading. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Kind of talk about Cruxia as a whole. I could literally sit here for like 5 hours and just talk about Cruxia and have like, you know, like the Charlie Day poster with all of the strings up and pointed at all this different stuff. I've got like, you know, books and books and books, notebooks filled with, you know, mostly it's Dungeons and Dragons plot and story and notes, but, you know, those just break right down into, you know, you got to like shuffle things around and whatnot. You actually have a little more freedom when you're writing it, because everyone makes the decision that you want them to on time. But, you know, it's very similar. Outlining a story, no matter what you do, is you know, similar every time you do it. So Cruxia is an empire in a world called Galea. They are the largest, they're a human empire. They're like the largest empire during the current phase, you know, the current like era of history. They are mostly human. There's definitely multiple races. There's not as many as like D&D, and they're kind of like my own. You have the Turrican, which are mostly on the western continent. Cruxia is the eastern continent. Cruxia, above Cruxia is Vulcan, and then on the western side you have the western continent. Gaiathor is the name of the western continent. The Turrican are they're like a mammalian, like beastmen. You know, some of them have like lion faces, and some of them have tusks, and their tribes are kind of delineated based on the animal that they have evolved from. And the idea is that they're humanoid, but they're not humans. They are just these other animals that have evolved up to bipedalism. You know, being bipedal, having opposing thumbs, large brains. You know, same thing that, you know, they're just another evolution of different mammals in the way that humans did as well. In the same way, there's the Krodan. The Krodan are lizard men, you know, heavily influenced by Mass Effect's Krogan. Like I said, you know, like wear your influences on your sleeves. The Krodan are cold-blooded. They're, like armored in scales. They're generally like 7 or 8 feet tall. They're fantastic warriors, and they have, you know, on the Western continent, the Turrican and the Krodan kind of like live in a fragile peace. Their tribes kind of warred with each other for years. And like when I like the species have like hundreds of tribes within the two of them. Like neither the Turrican nor the Krodan have ever really worked as one unit. They've always been kind of broken down into tribes and things like that. So it's, I don't want to generalize my own people. It's kind of like what I'm trying to say. It's like the entire Turrican never went to war with the entire Krodan, but there's just a lot of border disputes between them. And then the last are the Volcan. The Volcan are actually the offshoot of Turrican and humans. They're in the north. They live in mountains in the cold. They could be compared to dwarves, but they're more like Northmen. Heavily, big beards, hardy stock. They're a bit stockier than most people, but I wouldn't call it. They're not dwarves in the traditional sense. They're kind of like my world's dwarves, though. The Volcan, kind of like like Scandinavian folk, the Northerners, up near the cold. Those are the three. Next, time I do registry course, I'll actually use some maps to point out things and stuff like that. But this is broad strokes, just kind of world building. I'm going to try and keep this down to about 4 minutes, and then for the last 5 minutes, do a little bit of reading. I guess when you jump into the nicest thing about Candlelighter, the novel, is that I've got, like I said, like 5 hours that I can do of YouTube of lore and stuff like that. But this story does not have billions and billions of characters and ideas, and it's very much just a small perspective from about 6 or 7 different characters in the capital city, Cruxia. It all takes place in one city, very self-contained story. It's a detective story, hard-boiled kind of like noir fiction. The back is, why not? Candlelighter, Legends of Cruxia, Book 1. A High Father is murdered by a syndicate hit squad known as Sweepers, and the only witness is a poor teenage Candlelighter. Chased through the capital city of Cruxia, she must use all of her street smarts and meager resources to stay alive. An investigator who's fenced with prejudice her whole life is told to bury the file, along with her love-struck assistant wizard. The case unravels the fabric of the city, revealing a long-standing conspiracy, and pulls in a sober ex-sweeper who wants nothing to do with the old life. The hit squad is under heavy pressure, and their machinations just might break the whole empire in half. A mix of fantasy and noir, Candlelighter is the first book in the Legends of Cruxia series. So yeah, that's the byline. It's a good jumping off point. It kind of will just give you very, very intro knowledge to the setting of Cruxia, especially the main city. It starts to pull in some of the other races and things like that, and it kind of breaks down a little bit of the gods, which that's the real Charlie Day poster, is the Pantheon of Gods that I've got. But it doesn't info dump on you. It just very lightly sprinkles some lore bits along the way for you. Which is actually, I'll push my short story I'm working on as well. Why not? Kind of this whole channel is supposed to be like sort of like a what's what of, Carter's brain. What's going on? The story's called Fame. It follows one of the big three, as I like to call them. DC Comics has its big three with Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. And my big three are kind of the founders of the Cruxian Empire. It's Garland Crucius, first emperor of Cruxia. Mjolnir, the High King of Volcan, who joins him and allies the Volcan with Cruxians for the first time, thus creating the empire. And Lexicon Lutoris. Lexicon Lutoris is a immortal Fen. All the Fen are immortal. It's like my elves, essentially. Lexicon Lutoris is actually the dude that stole immortality from the gods and brought it to his people. He's like the first immortal that made everyone immortal. By the time the Cruxian Empire has come around, the Fen Empire has collapsed 100%. In fact, Cruxia, the city, is built on the old capital citadel of the Fen. Cruxia, took over the city and made it its own. It's like the core of the human empire now. But Lexicon Lutoris is literally like, he helps found the empire because he's bored. His own empire is gone and crumbled to dust. And actually the story Fame, the entire point of the story Fame and this entire diatribe that have gone on is Fame is Lexicon Lutoris's first trip to the spirit realm, and it's where he steals immortality. It's that story. So that story does go into the gods, and has the gods as characters, and the much more cosmic side of stuff. But it's also, it's like a 20-page short story, so it doesn't hold you down in the deep end. It just kind of, takes a little dive into the deep end and comes out the other side. But yeah, Gred is the novel I'm working on right now, about 150 pages in. And the story of Fame is the short story that should be coming out, very soon, hopefully winter this year. 25 minutes on the time, which is I want to keep these under 30 minutes, you know what I mean? So I'll just do a little reading from Candlelighter, work on my voice. Got my coffee, always have my coffee. It's, 571 days sober of alcohol. I'm never going to be sober of coffee. That's my last vice. Night coffee, you'll hear me talk about, is my favorite vice, is my night coffee, All right, like David Lynch said, even bad coffee is better than no coffee at all. All right, let's find a good, I don't think I'll do a whole chapter. I'll do like a nice little, let's start with the beginning. Why not? Chapter 1. We'll see how far I can get it in 4 minutes. Rosen hung suspended, her legs wrapped in the rafters. She held her tunic close while reaching for the candle. She wasn't modest. Her clothes were dyed cheap. One wrong move and she'd catch flame. The Lamplighters Guild is not safe work. She dangled above the chandeliers in her sacrament of Veridon, a marble temple built to honor Sister Spring, goddess of birth. Lamplighters were responsible for all the streetlights. Candlelighters got the more prestigious work inside. She worked hard for her new position, head candlelighter on the God's Way. She took her knocks on the lampposts, working the mule quarter, lighting the taverns and brothels. Sure, it was her home, but it was also the most dangerous burg in all of Cruxia. Once the sun set, out came the pimps and the slavers, all looking for some sweet young thing to visit whores upon. Worse were the moles, mutated half-men that lurked in the city's sewers. Rosen thanked Auron she was born a girl for once. Young boys were all the rage on the red market anymore. Growing up in the mule was her saving grace. She knew which streets to stay off, which inns were safe, territories that shifted like the tide from day to day, week to week. She was smart too, thanks to her dad. A school teacher, he taught her how to read and write and count before consumption took him to Sister Mortia. Siblings bless his soul. Amen. He said Rosen got her smarts from him and her prudence from her ma. Rosen never met her mother. Complications in childbirth. It cost her dad all his savings to hire a medicer so that Rosen could live. But she was worth every silver, he used to say. Rosen smiled a sad smile upside down, looking at the silver ring on her thumb, her dad's wedding band, his last gift to her. But she daydreamed on the job. Gods knew she did enough dreaming when she slept. Daydreaming didn't get her this position, nor her savings, nor the room she rented. Her very own room, not some rope slung in the middle of a shanty tenement for her to slump on with the other poor wretches. No, a room with a bed and a candle and a desk. Beneath her floorboards were 19 silver pieces she saved over 5 years as a lamplighter, her ticket out of the mule. Time to focus on the goal. Millions of candles to light before she saved enough. So there she hung in the rafters of her sacrament of Veridon, the greatest temple on the God's Way. Veridon was the sister of spring, goddess of birth, protector of the lost. It was here Rosen spent her first year as an orphan. Yeah, that's just, that's the first 3 pages. I swear if you go for another 11, it gets into the juicy stuff. I'll kind of gauge what, listener and viewer feedback, constant viewer, constant reader, the old Stephen King twirl. Constant listener, I guess, constant viewer. We'll say constant viewer. We'll see what you guys like about this show. Today was kind of a smorgasbord of all the stuff that's going to be on display. 3 days doing Hop on the Hobby train with, me rambling about lore. And then one day we'll do Writer's Recourse, D&D prep, writing prep, probably do more readings and things like that. But I'll see what you guys like, and I'll put more videos like that out for you. Yeah, this has been Carter Reynolds here with 5 Up Recovery. Thanks for tuning in for the very first show, episode 101. We'll name it Excelsior because, that's what I'll close each show out with. If you're a nerd, just roll into it. That's what I figure. So take care, everyone. Excelsior.